do want the chocolates. Wait, no, 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 no! Stop, stop, please! I'm sorry, help! Ow! Fuck!
Silent protagonists are not uncommon in video games. From Mario to Dragon Quest and even Pokemon, it's a fairly saturated idea in the world of gaming. So what makes the protagonist of Persona stand apart from the heavy competition? See, for most games, silent protagonists are supposed to be blank slates. Something for the player to project onto without having the existing character's traits supersede the player's immersion. It's why most games that have a silent protagonist leading the story also have characters who act as the player's mouthpiece. They are generally the ones furthering the plot and expositing the details required for the player to understand what's happening in the story. A good example of this is the party members in Dragon Quest XI, where the protagonist never speaks, and the party members are the ones largely responsible for progressing the plot. Even when the player is given choices in the game, they are largely irrelevant because at several points once the game presents you with a choice, if you choose the wrong one, the game will force you to go ahead with the other choice anyway. And this is something Persona is guilty of as well. A majority of the choices in game, except for a few, will generally be irrelevant in the long term. Think of Sai's interrogation of Joker for example. Most of your choices throughout the plotline do not matter. It's only on the last stage of a social link where the choices matter, and even then, it's only a select few. However, despite the drawbacks presented by the very concept of silent protagonists, Persona handles its protagonists with a bit more grace than most games. This is mostly helped by the fact that Persona is not fully an RPG, but partly an RPG and partly a life sim. When it comes to silent protagonists, the way other characters interact with the protagonist is what sets the tone for what kind of a person the character is. For example, Minato from Persona 3 may come across as a depressed and isolated person, but as the story goes on, his dialogue choices change to being more caring, reflecting his state of mind and the themes of the game. And you, Narukami, is...
I'm the king.
Anyway, that brings us to Persona 5. Now this game oozes style in every sense of the word. From the UI to the palaces, everything is densely packed with detail. So it's not surprising that our usual blank slate protagonist happens to be more than a blank slate this time around. You can call him Ren, call him Akira. For the sake of this video, I'm gonna stick with Joker. At first glance, he's not very different from Minato or Yu. He's a cool and collected character who is smart and is charming. Or he could be a dog depending on your player choices. The element of player choice in Persona makes it hard for people to pinpoint exactly where the protagonist's personality lies. And this is true for most silent protagonists. While Persona 4 and 3 did have some distinct elements to showcase their character personalities, they were, in my opinion, mostly limited by the technology of their time. See, there is only so much you can visually represent about your protagonist when your models look like this. And this is an aspect where Joker benefits. There are so many subtle cues to his personality, both in his actions and across the story, that lets us comprehend what kind of a person he actually is. Most of his actions, expressions, and smaller aspects are what really paint us the picture of who he really is. From small things like him playing with his hair, to spinning his phone, to him tapping his pen while studying, or walking around with his hands in his pocket. It gives him a lot of character, something even Minato benefits from in Persona 3 Reload. But one thing I can say without a doubt is that he is not just a self-insert. I mean, there is an aspect of self-insert to every silent protagonist, but there is enough character to Joker to make him feel like his own person. For the next section, I will be going over specific parts of the story without covering it in its entirety, but there may or may not be spoilers, so if you haven't played the game yet or if you haven't finished the main story of the game, I highly recommend it. It's one of the best JRPGs in my opinion, and it's definitely worth the long hours. Unlike some other games that have playtime without substance in my opinion. To briefly go over his story, Joker, when trying to save a woman from harassment, got falsely accused of assault by the perpetrator and got put on probation. Expelled from his school and sent away from his hometown, he is forced to move to Tokyo for his education. During this time, he lives in Sojiro Sakura's cafe in his attic. Right off the bat, we get a sense of what kind of a person Joker is. He is someone with a strong sense of justice, someone who has the will to stand up for what's right. And doing the right thing is what gets him screwed. This is the catalyst for Joker's story, and its effects can be seen throughout the game. See, the game may not explicitly say it, but Joker is deeply traumatized by the events that happened to him. This is shown by several events that happen during both gameplay and story. One of the biggest examples being when he comes face to face with Shido but he can't even remember his face. Now, this could be due to it being a dark night that day and Joker just couldn't remember the face in the moment, but I believe this is due to him repressing the memory of his arrest heavily. There's other instances too where this can be seen, such as Morgana pointing out after the post-Kamoshida party that Joker doesn't usually eat a lot, or the fact that when you try to register for the DVD shop, Morgana will mention that Joker's hands were shaking when he was signing it. And then there's his glasses. See, Joker doesn't really need the glasses, he just wears them to look less intimidating and fierce. He's trying to blend in and keep a low profile, which would be fine, except this waste of space bullies a student into leaking Joker's personal background and making him a social pariah. In the social sim aspect of the game, or during his everyday life, Joker can be seen as a quiet but intelligent kid. Someone who is intuitive and sharp, but also clearly trying to keep a low profile and not speak up, because that's what got him into trouble in the first place. That is, in the real world. In the metaverse, however, Joker is portrayed as someone who is incredibly cool, cocky and intelligent. His unique persona being based on Arsène Lupin is a great tribute to the game's gentleman thief's motive. Joker clearly has the time of his life in the metaverse, where he can be his true self. Even when faced with life or death situations, he is consumed by the metaverse. Unlike Minato, who generally just goes with the flow because he was asked for help, or Yu, who is basically dragged into a conspiracy, Joker's entire demeanor changes from his real world self. In the real world, he's usually quiet and not usually smiling aside from when he's hanging out with his friends. But in the metaverse, he always wears a gleeful, confident smile. In fact, in my opinion, Joker has the most flashy outfit among all the Phantom Thieves. He is dissatisfied with the real world, not because it's not ideal for him, but because he was punished for doing the right thing, only because he didn't have the power to right Shido's wrongs. But once his persona awakens at his most desperate moment, when he's at the lowest point of his life and may actually get killed, he sports a devilish smile, smirking and enjoying the power that he now wields. His will of rebellion, as the game puts it, is born from the absolute rage he feels towards the world and the injustice that he faced. And once his persona has awakened, he is flashy and cocky with his movements. Even in combat, his idle animation has him taunting the enemy, while most of the party members will be stretching or waiting for their move. His cockiness would come off as abrasive or annoying, that is, if he couldn't back up every inch of his smug demeanor. Now, for a second I want to bring up an aspect of gameplay from Persona 3, 4 and 5. Never played 1 and 2, who this? But the games always make you, the protagonist, into the leader of the group. And while this works from a gameplay perspective, it has its issues from a narrative point of view. For instance, Minato, or Makoto I guess, is quite a passive character at the beginning of the story. He doesn't have any aspirations to defeat the shadows or end the dark hour. He is helping because he was asked. Plain and simple. If we take sources aside from the games into account, then it's even more clear in the Persona 3 movies, where Yukari basically berates him for it. Yu, on the other hand, has no particular reason to be the leader of the investigation team either, in my opinion. Now, you could say that him being the leader makes sense because he was the first one to awaken his persona and has the most combat experience in the group, but that still feels less justified as the story moves on. But in the case of Joker, he really does feel like the leader of the group. While his wildcard nature does give him an extra oomph, that's not all he has going for him. He is charismatic, fearless, and intelligent. All the characteristics that would work perfectly for a good leader. He is usually the point man in the group, unless Makoto or Futaba have something to say, and even then he isn't just listening in on what they say. From a story perspective, it seems like he is adding to it. Akechi heavily implies that Joker is on par with him in terms of intelligence, and this is shown a few times through gameplay too, where puzzles and riddles will be usually solved by Joker and the team has faith in him to solve them. Also, how he hilariously caught on immediately to Akechi's pancake screw up. If we were to abridge it, Joker in short has two sides to him. The quiet student who prefers keeping his head down and blend in, and the rebel phantom thief who cannot stand injustice and believes in fighting for what is right. But at the end of the day, they are both masks that he wears. His true personality can be seen in the scenes where he is hanging out with his friends throughout the story. Outside of the Phantom Thieves business, His real self doesn't seem as confident, suave, and cocky as his metaverse self. But he's also not as reserved, quiet, and shy as he portrays. He's an intelligent kid with his heart in the right place. Someone who can make dorky quips and snarky remarks regardless of the situation. While most of the Phantom Thieves only have one mask that is used to hide their true self, Joker has two. One is his mask in the metaverse, and the other is his glasses. When he is with his friends, he doesn't feel the need to wear either of them. Aside from his established personality, Joker also grows from his many experiences. A big part of the story after the thieves defeat Kaneshiro is that they are starting to forget the real reason why the Phantom Thieves even exist. While their mission had started as a way to hold people accountable and help others, they fall prey to the fame that they got and lose sight of why they are truly doing what they are doing. This fall from grace is actually an important aspect of the story, something that nearly got him killed and would have led to every member of the team dying had they not finally gotten their head back in the game and understood why they are doing what they are doing. This all comes to a close at the end of the Yaldabaoth story arc, or Maruki if you are on Royal, where defeating the enemy comes at the cost of losing the metaverse and as a result also your personas. And regardless of these consequences, Joker and the rest of the thieves accept it gracefully instead of clinging on to their fame. It perpetuates the idea that you don't need a persona to do the right thing, you just need to make sure that your will of rebellion doesn't burn out. As a result, even when they do not have enough power to beat Yaldabaoth, the unbreakable will of the group is what finally gains them the public support that lets Joker awaken Satanael. And while the third semester is basically just the Yaldabaoth arc all over again but with Maruki at the helm, Joker does still grow. When offered the ideal reality of Maruki, he understands how detrimental it is to humanity as a whole and how it would leave people as empty husks and rejects it, even if it means that Akechi would not be saved. But he doesn't force his ideals on his team, he asks them if they are satisfied with the life they have now and lets them make the choice to stay or break free from Maruki's control. By the way, I just want to point out that Maruki is an incredibly well written villain, but ultimately his ideals are wrong, and I will tackle that in a different video. I will do that. Joker's growth is also demonstrated through the evolution of his personas, with his original persona being Arsene, who is a darker persona than Orpheus or Izanagi in comparison. This is also highlighted through Arsene's awakening, where he asks Joker to perform all kinds of sacrilege for his own justice. In contrast, Yu was told to open his eyes, which yeah, that makes sense with the theme of the game. He was supposed to uncover the truth. And Minato was told, "From the sea of thy soul I come." The two differences in lines highlights just how different Joker is from the other two, and even how different Minato and Yu are from each other. Ultimately, I believe that Joker is an absolutely great example of what a silent protagonist should be like. He's still a blank slate, don't get me wrong, but he's so much more than that, and it oozes out of him in every aspect of his design and gameplay. On a scale of great voice characters to terrible silent protagonists, Joker somehow gets the best and worst of both, because despite the overwhelming hints to his true personality, he is held back by the silent protagonist nature of the game. In fact, in my opinion, a lot of the planning stuff that game implies Joker was a part of should have been things he was voiced for, especially considering how big a role he plays in the Akechi plot twist, where he and Morgana were the ones to notice the mistake in the first place. But despite it all, I still think he's a damn entertaining character. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. I'll be doing more videos like this in the future, and I hope you have a great day.